It's Chris. Let's do this crowdfunding roundup. What do you need to know this week? A few games that are going to catch your eye, a few games that are going to be a little bit more expensive, a little bit cheap, and a little bit indie, all in between. It's great to be Friday, isn't it? It's what you've been waiting for. Getting ready to swing into the weekend. No open this time. Let's go. Look, I told you from the get-go, Unstoppable is one of the ones I had my eyes on. And now this is going to be the tricky part, right? I think the concept and I think what they're doing here is unique. I think it's different. And I think it's also potentially a little bit of upkeep heavy. And so that's where the dynamic is going to be a make it or break it. And that's why it might be a try before you buy situation. But Unstoppable, almost at $100,000 here from Renegade Game Studios. And what you're doing essentially is it takes the old, deck building style of things and it sort of tosses that out the window a little bit and does the John DeClaire thing with the, sleeved cards and the overlaying of combinatorial system that they are known for with the previous games like Dead Reckoning, as well as the other ones that did it before, Edge of Darkness, and the Mystic Veils as well, if you will. And so this takes those aspects of things and makes it into a roguelike, whatever definition you're going to use in this situation, momentum builder, where you're facing one of three bosses that are going to be provided in the base game as a whole. You're going to sleeve a certain number of cards to begin with, and then you're going to go through your deck with a starting hand of the deck builder style that you're used to. But this is where it twists, right? You're going to be threading those cards as you choose them in a draft style at the beginning of each round from one of the decks that's available to you as you progress with your little tokens across, getting more access and better cards potentially as you go along. But then, doing the pick one of three, put the other two on the bottom, and then flipping it over and dealing with the threat card side of it potentially, and then dealing with a threat card essentially that you're eventually going to flip over and potentially obtain as well with the victory points or with the rewards that are going to be available to it. But as you go along, again, the level up is a little bit interesting as well, because you actually level up in this game by going through your deck as a whole, because you don't normally draw cards unless what you're defeating tells you to draw cards. And that's the different dynamic that we're not used to in a deck building style of things in the first place. Does that sound appealing to you? And that's hence where the name comes in. Unstoppable. You're trying to get that unstoppable momentum going from card to card, threat to threat, as you slowly repopulate them on a game by game basis. And you win by defeating the boss, you lose by getting health down to 0 or getting a threat tracker up to a certain point. So as you're going along, you're going to only have so much time to do it, and so you're going to have to not just slow roll this thing in the first place. Then it's just giving you everything you need to know on the page, right? It's a little expensive though, $60, and I think you're getting that deluxified sleeve mechanism that they're going for here. Playmat, and then extra playmat, and then extra playmat. So do you want all that stuff? Now, you're getting these cards, you're getting the cards, you're getting the cards. That's what this is in a nutshell, the sleeves and the player mats and the boss mats, but not the extra playmat. So as I said, you choose one of 4 heroes, you choose one of the 3 bosses, you draft your cards, upgrade them as you go along, because each card is going to have an ability. It's either going to be an ally or basically a tactic. And so your allies stay out there on the turn, you exhaust them a la Magic the Gathering style tapping, but then the tactics get discarded at the end of every round. The interesting thing though is that when I mentioned that level up, the level up actually causes you to discard all of your cards in play when I'm reading the rulebook, if I'm reading that correctly, which then you get to shuffle them all back into your deck. But then sometimes, is your momentum going to be stopped, or is it going to sort of be a catch-up mechanic for the boss so you can't get too unstoppable? I don't know. That's the sort of dynamic after reading the rulebook I'm a little bit surprised by. So if you want to check out the how to play, there you go. You're getting some extra cards, to be frank, which is kind of cool. I mean, there's a lot of extra cards there being offered at this point. The interesting thing though is I don't see any of these being exclusive, and I don't see any exclusivity right now marked on this side of things. So I would have to think that all of this is going to be available at retail. Now, they haven't said, at least on this page, how that's going to be bundled, if that's going to be bundled with like a mini expansion, a la your Aeon's Ends when they do that, or if it's just going to be bundled and maybe play a slightly higher price point though. And I worry though, if this game is going to be like $70 or $80 retail just for a core box at retail. So that's my other concern. There's tons of previews here and 1 or 2 reviews to go along with it. And shipping again, though, I mean, right, you're talking almost $80 for a card game right now. So that's a lot. That's a lot. I wanted to really just, back this immediately. But again, I'm looking at it from a comparative value. The other thing that slightly worries me when I go over the FAQ here, it says any plans for more than a 2-player. Again, I don't care about if it's more than 2-player, but they say this is mainly also designed as a solo card game with a strong 2-player co-op option. Is it actually going to be as strong? Or is this going to be sort of like a 20 strong or one of those others of the chip theory ilk where it's really good solo, but 2-player, it's kind of like, well, shared decision making and not quite, you know, up to snuff if you really want to be a main 2-player focus. The other thing that worries me a little bit down below is, you know, if they're doing the roguelike, roguelite, whatever you want to call it, right? They say, is there carryover from game to game? Because that's what essentially a lot of these games do. Like, you die and then you carry over. No, there is no game to game progression in Unstoppable. So it's really the pacing and the progression that they're talking about, but not the carryover, which I was kind of hoping for a la Slay the Spire, speaking of that, right? I mean, they say there's no late backing, but you can go pre-order on Renegade Games website and check it out if you want from that aspect, and maybe if you have a little bit of premium, you can do the $1 pledge as well. But that'd be the thing I wonder right now is just, okay, are those things going to be make it or break it for me elements? Especially now that I see that it's really designed as a solo style in the first place. The 2-player note, if you go down to the rulebook here, is basically a footnote. It's 1 page at the end of the rulebook, which is about 20 pages long, so it's not bad at all. And it kind of just says, well, you do everything simultaneously, and then you get to choose how you want to take your actions back and forth, because you have essentially 3 actions, and all these cards cost actions on a turn-by-turn basis. So, again, twice as hard and maybe scalable along the same lines. I don't know. That it's kind of my concern now as a non-solo player. And so that's what's giving me pause more than anything else. I love the concept. I love the idea of it. I love the mechanics that they're offering here. But as a main solo player, not person like me only, that is going to just cause me to be, well, a little bit hesitant as a whole, right? So previews say it's that good. Check it out. Then we're talking about Tsukuyumi Amaterasu Rising. I think I pronounced that somewhat correctly, but it's got $125,000. This is the 3rd iteration, I believe, from Gray Fox Games. This is the 2.5 version, though. If you actually go down, it's the 3rd Kickstarter is what I meant. And so this is a very heavy area control style game with asymmetric factions that you're slowly building up momentum, crashing into each other, going through other territories over 4 rounds to be the one scoring the most victory points based on who controls the center area, who controls the most areas at the end of the round, as well as your objectives, hidden objectives, or quests that you can do along the way. It's heavy. This is a 2+, probably closer to 3+ hour game, and you're going to be having to do that in a hex-based grid situation as you move your asymmetric troops along the board. And this game offers you essentially asymmetric factions ad nauseum. You slowly lay these tiles out at the beginning of the game, creating your own individual board based on the scenario that is going to be chosen in the first place. The expansions that are going to be offered, including the old ones, as well as some new ones here that are going to bring at least 2 different factions to the base game as a whole, in addition to some other terrain, other items, and other quests that are going to be available as well. That gives you an upgrade pack if you have one of the previous editions, and we'll just kind of scroll down here so you can get a little bit more info on how you're playing. Again, drafting, resolving your flexible action card per turn, taking your special actions, manipulating them, producing your units, and then mobilizing them for conflict across the board. So, I mean, it isn't widely available at retail. I'll give them that. And there's a little bit of exclusivity with some of the other content because they've not offered, I think, some of the other expansions hardly at all. So they're bringing back some of them here. But again, if you're looking at all of that, as pretty as that box color arrangement rainbow style is, that's $300 before shipping's worth of game. And even if you're a returning backer, you can spend nearly $200 to get an upgrade kit, 2 expansions, and, well, new boxes, essentially, for the core box. So that's a lot of money for an expansion, folks. 60 euros is a ton, is an absolute ton. I don't know if this is going to be for you. This is going to be the heaviest asymmetric game. I'd make the argument that you may have in your collection or rotation if you're one of those people in the first place. Yeah, it's going to have asymmetry. Yeah, it's going to have a ton of combinations, but are those combinations and those mechanics with these driven aspects of things going to be up your ilk? Because again, 4 rounds taking you 3 hours. That's a lot of stuff going on. And I'd again make the argument that this is going to be best at multiple players and at least 4 players as a whole. And does your group dynamic fit from that aspect of things? Again, here are some of the expansion contents, 25 miniatures, cool gaiju that are going to be available and adaptable and upgradable. And that gives you essentially a new mode or a new way of playing in addition with this new expansion. And again, here's the upgrade stuff for the miniatures and the cards and the errata from that aspect of things. And if you have the standee version here, they said, well, that you can get over on their website some more of the new stuff upgraded that way. So they run you through exactly what I just did here with the new stuff versus the old stuff. And there's a bunch of quotes all over the page if you've seen me scrolling about how fantastic this game is. So again, that'd be my question is, do you have the game group? Do you have the table in front of you to actually play it? Not physically, although physically I think it is actually a relatively large game, but more from a metaphorical sense, because as much as I would like this game, that would be my biggest concern by far and away. So a couple reviews, couple previews, everything else in between there. Shipping's expensive though for what it is as well. So again, it's going to cost you a ton. This is a lifestyle game, just like anything else that we cover that's going to be campaign-driven scenario, dungeon crawl-esque vibe. This is the area control version of it as a whole. And so, I mean, third time around, still over 6 figures, so it's got an audience and people like it, so check it out. Next up, this is the surprise of the week so far with $60,000 as well on Kickstarter. And this is the Fall of Kingdoms. And this reminds me a little bit of a Coup meets Werewolf, if you will, from that aspect of things, because 20 to 40 minutes, 5 minutes to learn, and 2 to 7 players, because essentially all you're doing is you're taking basically your income phase, and then you're taking an action, and your action is going to be limited to the 6 different types of tactical actions that are offered in this game in terms of guessing other people's cards, bluffing, or negotiating to go along with them to attack or to challenge other people. You're all going to have individual 6 character cards as well, and if you get to choose which of their character cards are which as one of your accusations or actions in the first place, you can slowly eliminate other people's character cards, and you go until the last one standing either with 0 defense or 0 character cards. And I mean, aesthetically very pleasing, but it's AI art. So just take that for what you will. And they address it down at the bottom and they say, well, we've done like 5,000 iterations and it's not solely AI art generated, but there is that element of things. And they basically put a disclaimer on there about what to extent they used it. And it's not very, clear. It's a little ambiguous, to be frank with you. But again, does that really matter to you? Well, clearly it doesn't if you got $60,000 and this many people backing it for a game that I had never even heard of prior to crowdfunding this week. And, it's going to be $40 for the base game. It's going to be $60+ for 2 expansions because you don't even know if you like the base game yet, so you can get those. And there's not a whole lot of aspects labeling on the page other than this description here of what's going to add in terms of the complexity, as it says. Sacrificing, dilemmas, negotiation, extra layer of complexity somehow with a die and destiny cards to go along with it. Divine protection cards to somehow block other people from potentially doing take that, but it's a very heavy take that game in the first place. So 18 Kickstarter exclusive Destiny cards right there as well to make it more wild and unpredictable. Then a brief game rules overview right here, and then we finally get down to the rulebook. So if you really want to see what the rulebook entails and how those dynamics and those expansions are going to be offered and their role essentially interacting. And the truth of it is the rulebook is like basically this page in a nutshell just rolled into a PDF. So it doesn't really give you any more illumination of what the dynamics are going to be. It lays out again all of these things separately so you can check that out. But essentially also they say that this is sort of a timed game-ish, which I'm not really sure is completely necessary, but I guess it does keep the game moving and flowing because you have 1 minute to do all of your actions in the beginning, including gathering your money and then negotiating just verbally, I guess. I don't know how you're going to do that otherwise. And then taking either one of these actions or one of the character actions again. So that's it though in a nutshell. They've got a little bit of stretch goals here with basically some deluxifications and a slight bit of gameplay content. But that's going to be where it's at right now. And somehow you're going to get this in May of 2025, they're saying. So does that interest you? One gameplay video as well. Again, group dynamics. Speaking of that, it's just in a different way than the previous game that we were just talking about in Tsukuyumi. But there you go, Fall of Kingdoms. Next up, Battle Bake. It's an action selection with 3 action points per turn, with actions varying from 2 or 1 points of how you're going to be maneuvering, gathering resources, baking in one of your 2 separate baking trays, and slowly accumulating your baked goods for a total of 7 points in order to win. 6 different types of asymmetric character cards that you're beginning with, tiers that you're going to be drawing from, and taking elements, effects, dessert cards, and ingredients along with it. A slight deluxified gourmet edition, as well as 4 little mini expansions offering you more of said different types of cards in the first place. That's basically your situation, right? Draw 2 cards at the beginning. You got 3 action points, like I mentioned. They lay out the different actions here that you can take: prep, baking, displaying, selling, and then clean up down to the hand limit. I think it's under 5. And then, well, apparently you can swap and special abilities to cause disruption. So a little bit of take that. And 7 victory points there as a whole. So $36 gets you stretch goals, gourmet edition for $50, and everything under the sun for, wow, $80+. So again, do you like that? It's going to be a little expensive for a card-driven indie style game from their first game from Grand Zuckery Games, but I mean, it's funded $12,000. So give it a look-see. Next up, Carom Golf. We're covering it because it's got $2,000. It's funded. They're really only going for $200. So, 100% of your funding goal plus some. So we'll go with it. Carom Golf, right? It's, tabletop golf with flicking, and you just carom off the little terrain tiles that you're going along. And they're doing 2 new versions of it with a new edition here of Carom Golf, very similar to the original. And then they've got more of a 2D version here with a mini style of things if you want, and then a garbage mini expansion to go along with it if you're getting the early pledge gift during the first 72 hours of the campaign. Reprints of the 3D and the Dynamite expansion to go along with it. If you're not familiar, they give you a little bit of modified course setup that you can check out here as you're going along. Variants proposed by the game offers in the first place. And it's golf, right? You've got the variants, you're flicking and going across with the ball that's out there, and you can just follow the caroms as you go along and see if you like a dexterity-based board game with another golf theme. Does that sound good to you? They lay all the prices here, a few tiny little stretch goals as well. I mean, it may not be the most aesthetically pleasing thing on your table, but if you're going for something like this, I mean, there's a couple out there. Is this one going to be your ilk? It's probably cheaper than some of the other ones though as well. So you can even print and play if you so choose. So anywhere from $22 and on up. Let's see what we get. 76 for physical copies of some of the larger ones as well as a whole. So that's it. You know, want to cover it, want to talk about it, give you a little bit of insight and look, see if you want. So Carom Golf. Then we have My Town. Miss Merck asked me to cover it, and I like covering Japanese games, so we're checking it out this week. It only has 9 backers, $400. That's actually a pretty penny right there. And it's a family-friendly city planning style game where you're rolling, moving around, Monopoly-esque, but only if you did Monopoly and you could actually buy other players' properties out from under them. You have to get houses on all 4 city objectives, like in the corners, and then you have to go around a lap of the city and declare yourself the victor in that sense as a part of the endgame condition. It's relatively short and sweet. You're building these landmarks as you go along, paying rent or paying spaces if you land on them, but also the ability to buy empty ones or even pay double what other people have paid in the first place based on what's down there as well to buy them out from your opponents. So PDF version as well as the video rules explanations there. And that's basically in a nutshell, a little bit of promo cards. And, you know, someone on Board Game Geek was like, they're only shipping to select countries. This is a first time, very, 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 very indie designer, right? Like, come on, give them a break. You know, people, you know, again, I'm sorry that it doesn't ship, you know, basically anywhere into Europe. But if I was the one coordinating this too, I'd probably start out with some of these small and only go to a couple countries myself as well. So, you know what? Just remember, person behind the game in the first place. So, if you want to check it out though more, give the rulebook a look-see. It's not terribly complicated. You can see how you're going to be placing these meeples down, promoting them to house tokens, as well as stopping at the special squares in the corners where you can build things along the way. And then obviously you're stopping at these stores, promoting, selling, as well as stopping and gathering all of the resources that you may need payment-wise. So there you go. That's it. Check it out if you're interested. So next up we have Lucky Bears National Parks board game. I mean, it's like a 2-player game, 15 minutes. All you're doing is drawing tokens from the center of the board. And you're just putting them in numerical order in like a 5x5 grid, but there's more than 25, obviously, if you're going 2-player as well. So there's plus upwards of 60 of these tokens, at least based on the numbers that I saw right there. Well, 63, duh, Chris. And so you're slowly just filling your board. And if you can't place it or you want to swap it with a token that's already down, there's really no penalty to do so. And so that's going to be the issue, is that it's going to come down to really who doesn't get screwed, or these bears as the, you know, sort of take that mechanism, because they allow you to kind of steal or grab other people's or discard them from the other person's board. And so if you draw some of them, it might just be better. If you don't draw some of them, well, you just kind of maybe SOL. All you're doing is basically putting them out in the first place in numerical order. You start off by putting 5 tokens diagonally from top left to bottom right as you're going along. The Grizzly expansion here is going to give you a little bit more dynamic of the Grizzlies as well as you're drawing them. And then if you don't like these tokens, you just put them back in the center face up so your opponent knows what they are. That's the game in a nutshell. It's got some facts, you got some cute nature theme, and it gives you everything that you're going on here, right? It's fast, it's going to be quick. It's going to be probably too light for a lot of people, but if you're looking for this sort of thing and you want the aesthetic style and you want to support a first-time creator on crowdfunding, there you go. I mean, here you can see what they are, and they're just numerically based, and you're just making sure that every single token of your 25 based grid is in order. So you're getting it. 4-player bundle as well if you want there for $50. 4 players is stickers and a Grizzly expansion as well. And if you want everything to go along with it, you're going to be talking $60 as well. So that's it. That's everything you need to know about Lucky Bears National Parks board game. It's funded. Check it out. We're going to talk about it really briefly, but Bottle Shock, you're going to be actually drinking blind bottle samples as you go around. $27,000. It's a wine tasting social deduction party game with somehow secret roles as you're being pitted against each other. And you choose literally red or white wine night, put them in blind bags, select secret identities to figure out who's going with who, read clue cards to help other people figure out which ones you're doing, rinse and repeat, essentially trying to make sure that people can figure out what ones are what bottles in each round as you're tasting and sampling and getting drunker as you go along, right? But if you want this, it's going to cost you $140 with the deluxe edition for a party game where you get to drink. So, right? Okay. That's everything. It gives you sort of an overview here of the different rounds that you're going to be going through. and the winner is somehow crowned as well. So I'm just going to leave it at that, right? I'm not going to talk about the person who was just, critiquing Distilled over on the Board Game Geek forum, saying that, how they were portraying vodka wasn't completely accurate, thematically incorporating withdrawing the cards and removing the tops and bottoms. That is just inane. Well, and if you like this sort of thing, though, you can check this out. Necromansters, it's a CCG, and somehow $2,000, because CCGs never fail to fund on crowdfunding. It's 150 cards that you're going to be doing, and you're calling undead monsters to double cross your way to victory as a whole. You have 3 different modes that are going to be available to you as you slowly combine these creatures in order to strengthen your attacks and attack your opponent and take your opponent out. Somehow they say they're going to have compatible expansions already, in case you're interested and worried that CCGs aren't going to have enough life in the first place. You're just attacking the other player until you knock them out. And as you use these basic building blocks of undead creatures to create bigger, stronger ones, you play them as you're trying to create these stacks and protect yourself in the same manner. Now, if you reach 3 in a stack, though, it sort of locks it out so that you have nowhere else to go, and you have to be able to activate these slabs. You can only have 1 of these at a time that you're basically utilizing. That's the briefest of overviews, right? How do you feel about self-contained CCGs and maybe some expansions to go along with it? Again, not a lot on the page, and again, somehow $2,000. So if you're interested, thought I'd at least talk about it. There you go. Next up, coming back to crowdfunding as well, over on GameFound, Skytear Horde with a campaign style driven, asymmetric faction decks that you can link together now in a 4-campaign scenario with outsiders and portals as you're going along. Want to know more about this game? Shelfside gives it that rating, so you can check them out and know how good this game actually is. But it's got $140,000 as sort of a sometimes-ish 2-player lane battler with deck construction, but mainly also with pre-made decks if you're like me in the first place. And they're giving you just more decks. More decks, more decks, more decks. I've got the monoliths. I'm gonna have a review out of it shortly, maybe at the beginning of July, probably not the end of June. Anyway, that's a whole nother issue. But you're getting deluxified tokens and just more decks as a whole, right? Castles, which are your bases that you're defending, and you're slowly just getting milled deck-wise until you either knock out the outsider boss through the use of your attacks, but you only draw cards a la, the previously mentioned Unstoppable by defeating enemies in the first place, and you're going to have minions that are going to be slowly activating back and forth, as well as threats that are going to present to you in lanes that you're going to have to deal with and mitigate pandemic style, but in a completely and utterly different aspect in the first place. More Horde decks, more Alliance decks, 12 of each, and just scenarios that are going to go along with it, with the new dynamic element of gold, which is going to be a shared resource between scenarios that allows you to change your setup by spending the gold in between the 4 styles of campaigns as you go along. Again, what are you getting, right? 3 Alliance decks, 3 more Horde decks, all sorts of crazy stuff. If you want to do a one-off, you can do more portals, more tribes, and more pre-made decks, or do the 4 linked scenario combinations of your choosing, essentially. So heal your castle, grow your deck, or get the scenario actions like we just mentioned, and some really cool outsiders. The rulebook is a little bit harder to parse at times with some of the minion stuff of just getting the dynamics and the terminology down, but it's a very nice solo game. And like I said, I'll be checking it out a little bit further in detail in a future video as well. But if you want to get everything new standalone here, again, gameplay all-ins, $55. And if you want to deluxify it, again, it's going to be about $80 before shipping. And wow, that's a lot of money though for this game, and you need to love it. Again, like I say, if you're going to buy that much for it, becomes more of a lifestyle, especially if you're a deck constructor and not a deck builder. So is that your ilk? Do you want the sleeves? Do you want the promos? Do you want everything else to go along with it? Plenty of stuff, plenty of opinions, plenty of content if you want to digest it. Again, it's just, how complex do you like this sort of thing? It's like Imperium, only just more of a deck builder-esque light version of that with lanes. Not really. I'm not really sure you can make that full comparison. But I did just see in the Board Game Geek comment section that Imperium Horizons, the latest one, they redid the rulebook because they realized that the rulebook was finally not good at actually explaining the game. So I'm tempted now to put that one back on my wish list and see. So anyway, Skytear Horde, check them out. Skytear Games putting out a good indie product. $150,000, right? You don't get that the third time around if people don't like it. So there you go. Then we're talking about Nightshift. Nightshift here as a strip club game, but it's essentially a roll and move with a lot of more rolls and draws as you may expect. But it's got $200,000 because I think this actually has quite the cult following from the creator on other social media. But this game, really where people are going though, is $150 game pledge right now if you include shipping. And it basically offers you just a deluxeification, right? Magnetic box, holographic, velvet interior, artwork, holographic, one gameplay card there, lore book, stickers, and a sleeve. And that's a big price point increase when the standard edition is, well, 2/3 of that. So how do you play this game? Well, what you do is you take one of your asymmetric dancers. I know I'm saying this on crowdfunding, but you have customers lined up around here, and you just use your 4 energy action points to move them slowly, one around the outside. As you move around them, they flip up. If you stay on one of the flip ups and you do a customer, you captivate them or capture them or whatever you're going to do, then you do the next phase of things where they pay you money. And if you stay with a loyal customer the next round, no one steals it, because if someone else moves onto your space, all they have to do is roll a die higher than the value of the loyalty on the card in the first place, and then they steal your customer. But if you stay with a customer for the next round, then you go into one of these 2 rooms, the VIP room and the private room. One of them is just literally drawing cards face up, and you don't really seem to have as much control or mitigation, although there seem to be some little powers that you can buy as ways of mitigating as a whole. But you just kind of flip them up and you draw like 3 of them, and if you get symbols that match, then you bust and you don't get as much money. And then the other one is just, again, rolling to see if you get attributes or characteristics that can be fulfilled. And again, you roll until you kind of either fill them up or bust. And that's the game. Whoever ends up with the most money after a certain number of rounds wins, right? So loyalty right there, a couple powers that I mentioned. Tactical gameplay, I mean, the miniatures are 50 centimeters, and I think that's where a lot of the price point is. So I would argue that without miniatures, this game should be a lot less. But if you want to get miniatures only as well, you can pay $30 plus shipping from that aspect of things. So that's it. That's in a nutshell. There's a couple comments and a video or 2 down here at the bottom. The rulebook is there as well. And you know what? I give kudos for Dragon's Tomb right here. We should stick to more traditional themes like war, colonialism, and murders. But that's it. That's all you need to know. And check it out because it's got an audience, whether or not it's you. So there you go. Speaking of things that have audiences that I am not going to get into because of probably the most densely and largely written rulebooks that I've seen on crowdfunding all years, we're going to go with, sort of the Civ War strategy games segue, if you will. First up is Imperial Borders. Again, you know me, kudos for true funding goals of $200,000 here, and that's massive, right? Napoleonic 2-6 player from, probably this is why it's got that much money already, the designer of War Room and Axis of Allies. And War Room is one of those huge box games that they say is going to be, again, a lifestyle game. And they say flat out at the beginning, right? This is $265 plus free shipping on crowdfunding, but we're going to charge you $300 plus $50 shipping at retail. So, you know what? That's where you're going to save your money, potentially. And you're going to get stretch goals, and you can get it in, a year and a half or so. And if you want War Room, you can pay $500. I mean, these are like the war strategic game equivalents of Kingdom Death Monster, if you will, for me, from that standpoint. So it also says right here, again, here's that disclaimer that I just told you about, and it expires at the end of the campaign. So they have a long campaign, and you can check it out. And gameplay, I have no idea, right? You play this, though, I think what it says, up to 8 players, so a diplomacy-style game with 5 rounds, 7 phases in each of these rounds. They give you the brief overview of getting your resources, plotting, establishing the turn order, because that's got to be very careful, on the march, annex, parade, purchase. Rulebook is there. When I say this, right, like this is an example page of the rulebook. It's 32 pages of this. Look how dense this is, folks. This is a lot of stuff going on. A lot, right? I wasn't kidding. So that's why I want to cover it. I want to mention it. If you're one of those people and you somehow ended up on my channel and you're looking at this, great, go for it. You can get neoprene mats. You can get a whole bunch of extra stuff to go along with it. Dinosaur comparison size there. I love that. My 3-year-old would love that as well. But we have a huge T-Rex dinosaur thing out in the main room. But miniatures, if you really want to deluxify it, and there you go. I guess check out the rulebook, because that's going to be your best way of figuring it out from that standpoint. And then we're going to talk about Europa Universalis, the Defying Destiny expansion, which has even more money, almost $300,000 for a reprint that something hasn't been available to get on the retail side of things as a whole. And I just love skipping down here to the video. One, you can see that the teach video is 50 minutes, folks. The teach video is 50 minutes. But then I like this because 3-Minute Board Game said the game that broke 3-Minute Board Games. So in case you're wondering how heavy it is, right, take that for what it is. The other thing that I have to comment on, again, I can't talk about gameplay. I can't comment, any sort of how this actually does it. I think the rulebook I got linked to over on the Board Game Geek forums. I'll pull up that in a second. But I mean, again, this is a $200 game. This is, again, the equivalent of sort of a Kingdom Death Aeon Trespass. So are you going to get both these if that's your type? Anyway, sorry. $50 for the expansion, though. And this is what I'm going to say. And this is what I've critiqued other crowdfunding campaigns for, like Roth, right? I did that with Roth as well. The extended standard version, fine. The returning all-in pledge, though. So if you have the base game, if you already have the stuff, you can deluxify and spend $200 deluxifying this, right? That is 5 times nearly the actual gameplay content level on this. And I criticized Roth for being like 3 times or so. This is 5. So I'm sorry. That is way too much stuff. This better be the only game that you play for pretty much all of 2025 when it actually gets to you. Well, and it's probably going to be sometime late 2025. So you probably got like 6 months of 2025 that this one's the only game that you play. But anyway, that's it. I'm not going in any further. If you want to see my example here, this is the rule book, right? Look at this table of contents. Again, this is a 48-page rule book. The introduction, the overview, again, super dense, right? There's no pictures, there's no illustrations. This is just straight up listing stuff. Wow, terminology. You finally get to the pictures, but even that, right? Huge amount of information on a single page. And don't worry, there's only 5 phases in 4 rounds for this one. So slightly less. I got nothing else to say. People love it. People got a thing. People going for it. And there you go. Next up, Incubo. I don't have a clue how this plays. This is a 1 to 2 player. They say innovative deck builder, but you're like drawing your cards from your deck one at a time and putting them in either your play, pass, or like completely trash pile. And I kind of read through the rulebook and I just don't get it, because you're going to be playing these cards, defeating monsters as you're drawing the monster piece cards from the 3 phases of Dream Sleep, or the 3 REM piles, as you're going along. Like the first one, you just grab 1 card from. The second pile, you grab 2 and choose 1. The third pile, you grab 1 of 3 and you choose the monster you're going to fight. And you have to get enough courage based on the cards played. And there's a whole lot of iconography and combo systems that's going to be available to you. But you're going to be playing as a 2-player where you sit across from each other and pass these cards back and forth depending on which pile they go to. So if you put it on like 1 pile, then it goes to the other player's deck when you reshuffle. If you play it on one of your other piles, then it goes back to yours. And then if you play it on the 3rd pile, it just is gotten rid of as a whole. How to play, like I said, right? Play, pass, elimination row. But the courage value counts when you're facing the dream. And so you do that until you get enough courage or you suffer terror. And that's the part I just don't really kind of get, just top view down. So you're going to have to check out the rulebook, though, to really get a good idea of what the flow of this game is, because I'll be frank with you, I don't. So you need to check it as you defeat parts of this monster and as you go along. So solo mode is a variant, 1 video and a rulebook right there. And it's going to cost you just $25 for the base pledge. But if you want to get a postcard and a playmat, you can spend $60 as well. But if you want just a little extra metal dice, you can kind of go halvesies there and go for $40. So stretch goals, 1 little thing upgrading there. We talked about some of the add-ons, and shipping is going to be whatever it is. So check that out if you're interested. Yeah, there you go. I'm leaving it at that one. Again, doing well. It's $5,000 over its funding goal. So Incubo. Last but not least, Jomsviking. I think that's how I'm pronouncing it. We'll go with the J pronunciation like that. But again, just funded $11,000 of a $10,000 funding goal. Again, a different spin on the deck builder where you're going to be fighting monsters that get assigned to you over like a 3-round situation, 3 sagas, if you will, as you go back and forth doing combat when you draft your asymmetric character and then their equipment each time as you battle back and forth and potentially play cards combolicious to either increase your ability to take out your monsters, or as they say here, to give a little bit of at least direct negative interaction, more so in the sense that you can actually heal your enemies' monsters or the enemies that they're fighting, or you can buff their enemies, not necessarily do damage to your opponents in that way. And so it's basically who has the most, points at the end of the game based on how well you do, how much damage you take, and what's available to you in the first place. There are all the modes in this one too, solo, co-op, and competitive, a little bit of video content and a rule book right there as well. So $44 will get you this, and somehow, again, if you don't want player pawns, you can spend an additional basically cost of the game as a whole to get miniatures to go along with it. Sleeves, sleeves, and sleeves, and a diorama. Okay, sure. I have a Naruto diorama on the floor sitting behind me, behind the table. Anyway, you don't need to know about that, but that's the gist of it. Project timeline puts it somewhere, probably about a year from now, if we're being probably accurate there. We'll see. So it's got a cyberpunk meets Norse mythology background. So there you go. That's the crowdfunding roundup this week. That's everything all in one. I don't know. I'm getting a little trouble motivated this week, as you noticed. A little less content, but that's okay. I just didn't really feel like editing this week at all. So I'm not sure if the news video will be out on Saturday or if I'm going to be super lazy and the news video will come out on Sunday. So I don't know. Just got to make it through one more week after this. So, you know, a week from today, there will be a roundup. But then 2 weeks from today, there will not be a roundup because your boy is going on vacation. But don't worry. I'm pre-recording some stuff. And that's also why I was a little bit lazy about editing. So I've got enough stuff to be having some content up while I'm gone because it's fun to have it spaced out evenly and not just big gaps. But I've got some good stuff. Ooh, boy, I got some good stuff. A second Don't Back Anything, the Don't Buy Retail at June, the best of May, the best of so far 2024, the first 6 months. Ooh, we got some good stuff cooking. Don't Back Grim Coven. We got a little bit of that going on too. So all that's going to be coming out and more. So I have a look back video as well from 2021, I think, for June as well. I think I'm skipping 2022. I don't remember. I think 2022 was sort of the down year. So I'm skipping that one. Or I'll just smash them both together because there weren't as many fun, interesting ones to talk about. Did you watch the 2023 one? Boy, howdy did I rant and rave on that one. I think I got myself in trouble. Anyway, that's all I got. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Let me know down below what you think. And again, covering it every week as much as I can because crowdfunding is fun to talk about. And yes, I do have a good camera and lights. It's actually because of how I stream and the fact that, yes, I don't have a whole freaking dedicated, 20 foot by 20 foot room for this because I do this in a small cubby in my house, essentially. And when you do it in a small cubby, the lighting is never going to look right. And when you stream straight from the camera onto the laptop, yes, the quality is a little bit because, well, the laptop is what it is. So yes, my production isn't quite as good as other people's. I see you in the comment section. Don't be fooled. Don't think I do. You know what? Someday maybe. But you know what? I'm okay with this. It's got me to this point. I'm done. Peace out. Have a great weekend. Oh, man, it's going to be hot. It's going to be freaking hot. It's been hot all week. My kids did tennis camp this week. They did soccer camp last week. They got, some day camp next week. So, I think I'll play some Switch this weekend. I bought Paper Mario, The 1,000-Year Door. My kids played it more than me, though, so we'll see. Did you watch the new Switch announcements from this past week? Mario Broship? Brother Friendship is what it was. Anyway, I'm done. Peace out.